What is going on, diehards? Welcome, degenerates. This is the Monday Night Diehard MMA podcast, your favorite podcast show, talking MMA, sports, betting, and the like. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me this evening. We are back after a long week off. Boy, did that feel like a long week. I know everybody got to spend some time with their families. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But either way, we're all excited to be back in our normal groove, our normal routine, talking about fights and betting. So thank you all very much for jumping in here with me this evening. I missed you. I know it's only been a week, but I'm ready to talk about some sports, betting, action. Josh Locke's in the chat. We've got Sam Blundell, Raw Torque, Eric bets fights. We've got my guy Rex Lee already calling for the t-shirt. Dog MMA, FTO Combat, Hayden Schneiderman, Sleepy Meg, Leon Nestang. We've got Luke McCann. How's everybody doing? All right. Y'all know the drill. It's Monday. It's football season. We're probably going to be a little short-staffed today, but people will roll in as we get going, and I hope they do because I am excited to have one of my favorite guests back on the show. It's been a little too long, but we got my guy Dan Tom MMA on the show tonight. How you doing, man?
Good, man. A little hard to do the double shaka right now, but I got you with the single, and I'm doubling on the heart, man, because I feel you on that intro, Clint. I feel you. I'm excited to just chop it up and talk some sports betting, man. Make some money to close out the year.
I'm ready, dude. It's been a tough, long time since we've been together. A little bit tougher on you than on me, I would think. How's the hand doing?
Good, man. I'm actually getting out of the cast this week, so hopefully everything comes out okay as it was lined up. I've been catching the injury bug a lot. I'm one of those fighters that catches the injury bug a lot in this current iteration of myself for those following. But thanks for asking, man. I appreciate that.
Always got to check up on you, man, making sure you're all good. So I know we had a bit of a layoff. I'm definitely ready to knock the dust off and talk about this week's card. We've got UFC Vegas 44 coming up here. Shout out to my guy, Josh Locks, with the $10 donation and the sticker. Thank you very much from my friend. We really appreciate that here on the show, going to support us here at Pub Sports Radio. Speaking of Pub, make sure you smash that like button. Let the algorithm know you're enjoying the live content here. Subscribe if you haven't already. But Dan, let's get right on into it, man. We don't have an event to recap or anything from last week, so let's just go ahead and chop it up. The first fight of the night is one that I am very much looking forward to. We've got the last samurai, my guy Luis Smolka, taking on Vince Morales. And this is a spot where, I'll be honest, these are both guys that I really like to back. These are both guys that I enjoy watching compete, and it's going to be tough for me because deep in my soul, I want them both to succeed. But as we know, both with gambling and with MMA, 99% of the time, only one guy gets their hands raised at the end of the night. Smolka's 17-7. Morales is 10-5. And Luis Smolka is one of these guys. I'm going to say this a few times over the course of the show, Dan. He's only 30. I feel like Luis Smolka has been around forever. Like, I keep looking at his age, expecting to see 34 or 35. So he's just now coming into the prime of his life at 30 years old. And his losses have really only ever been to kind of the cream of the crop fighters here in this division. Very light on his feet. Good boxing, constant movement. He likes to attack the body, which is always something you like to see. And he never settles. He's one of these guys that scrambles. So if someone tries to wrestle with him, grapple him, pin him against the fence, or put him on his back, he just never, ever takes that bottom position and stays there. He's always working to get back to where he needs to be or get an offensive submission, something along those lines. And he's got a very underrated ground game. The other thing is he's durable as hell. This guy's never been knocked out before. Taking on Vince Morales, training out of Syndicate MMA, a gym that we all love. Very aggressive, constant forward pressure. This guy likes to come forward. He's a former state champion in wrestling, so he's got that in his back pocket. And he's got a big power right hand, man. He puts everything into that right hand. Strong counter striking, and boy, does he swing for the fences. Vince Morales likes to bang, but he relies a little bit on that chin, in my opinion, and this is a step up in competition for him. First fight of the night, man, you know I got to jump in with both feet. I got Luis Smolka. I got him at minus 140. I put 2.8 units to win 2 on this very first fight of the night. I think he basically is better everywhere that this fight takes place. And Vince Morales being a little bit reliant on that finishing power, that KO, that ain't going to happen with Louis Smolka. I don't think he's going to be able to out-wrestle him. I don't think he's going to be able to submit him. So Vince really just has to be able to win minutes off Smolka, and I think Smolka's the more active fighter. So I'll take that minus 140. You can get plus 120 on the other side of this thing, and it does look like the line is moving my direction. I see minus 145s popping up around there market wide. I had a lot to say on this first one, Dan, so I apologize, but talk to me, dude. What do you think about this first fight?
Hey, this is good because this is one of many that I have not run through my complete comb, but don't worry, I've got things targeted. I've got some things set up for you as far as knowing where I'm at. I always say I reserve the right to change my pick, but you know what, Clint? I'm on the same side of you this one with the Smolka. I've not played it. I wasn't initially going to at the opener, which I believe was minus 185 neighborhood. Like you said, the line movement's going in the way. If you're a Smolka supporter, it's going in the way you would like to see it. So maybe it'll make me have a second thought. I hope to come out as confident as you. I love the notes on the body work. You were spot on for that. I will say, though, in Morales' defense, he did show to work the body a lot more in his last fight against Draco Rodriguez. Granted, a complete opposite, another youngster, but on the complete opposite side of the experience spectrum than Smolka is at. Granted, that was a rude awakening for him. I know you can't put too much stock into that, but Morales is still young himself. He's growing. And I'm not sure if he switched with Syndicate. I believe he did before that fight. But before Syndicate, he was actually up more toward Idaho, a little north of my state. I'm currently in the same state of Nevada. Syndicate's in my backyard. And that would explain his wrestling background, but he doesn't go to it a ton, doesn't rely on it a ton, not too accurate either way, offensively or defensively. But in that small cage, and when it comes to MMA wrestling and grappling and scrambling, I think Smolka can get a lot of his fight. So even if the headhunting does pay off for Morales, you could argue that it could pay off because, Smolka, not the best defensive fighter, right? That being said, I still feel like this is a scramble away from Smolka drowning out the round, maybe even getting a finish. We've seen Vince Morales go out on his shield, especially in grappling scenarios. So I don't hate your play. I'll share the pick with you.
All right. I like it, man. I like the vote of confidence early on. And hey, like I said, Vince Morales is a guy that I've liked to back myself. I think he's got good things coming. He's headed the right direction. So would it shock me if he won, if he made big improvements since the last time we saw him? No, not at all. I totally think that's on the table here. So just gotta go where I see the value at this point. We'll reassess after the fight's over whether or not we felt like we had it nailed. Next fight up, man. Let's move this thing right along. I almost removed it instead of making the window big there. That would have been fun. Technical difficulties for everybody. Alex Morono taking on Mickey Gall. Another spot where a couple guys I really like. Alex Morono is a guy that, honestly, Dan, I have to kind of kick myself here a little bit. Morono is one of those guys that I just kept going, he's underrated, he's underrated, he's undervalued, everybody looking past my guy. And then when it finally came time to back him, I was like, you know what? Maybe everyone was right. Maybe he's a dud. Maybe he don't got it. And then he goes off on a tear. So I ended up being on the wrong side of him, both ways. It's been difficult for me to pick my guy Morono actually getting his hand raised. So that's been a little frustrating for me, but I'm a huge fan. 20-7, tons of experience. Fortis MMA came in on short notice, 2 weeks, taking on David Sawada last time out and got the W. That was one where I think I actually bet against him. I thought Sawada's grappling was just going to be too much for him to handle. But he's got high output striking, man. Nice jab. He's durable. He likes to bang. Bites down, heavy counters. He's a BJJ black belt, almost never uses that grappling, even though we know he's got it. And he's a bit smaller at 170. That's a bit of an issue, but it also gives him an edge in the cardio. This guy just never stops because he's not cutting any weight. He's not having a hard time getting to 170 or anything like that. Mickey Gall on the flip side of this thing, the UFC is still trying to make Mickey Gall a thing. It's taken him this long, Dan, but it seems like he's finally putting it all together. He is coming off a massive, massive win. The only problem is that massive win coming off of Jordan Williams is against a guy who is a diabetic and is no longer in the organization anymore because he just can't hack it at this level. No offense meant. He's going to get released from the promotion because he's not quite UFC level. That's the guy that Mickey Gall can beat. And if you look back at Mickey Gall's record, he has been alternating wins and losses for his past 6 fights. So if you're a superstitious type of backer, that L is coming next. Dan, what do you think about this second fight here on the card?
Man, I've been on the wrong end of all the superstitious fighters who win, lose, and I'm like, yeah, there's no such things as trends in MMA. It can't go on forever. But in this case, I am on that trend. I like Morono here, and maybe I'm crazy, but in a fight that tipping my hat here, head Clint in a card that I think it's terrible for parlays. Morono may actually be an early anchor to get, if you're looking for a 2-legger or a 3-legger and trying to get a leg in early, which is always nice to try to either make your money, have time to adjust, or settle with it and enjoy the rest of the card as just a viewer, right? So I actually don't hate Morono in this spot at all. And the more tech specs of it, I guess you could say, is you're right. He doesn't use his jiu-jitsu a lot, but I would argue that his scrambling, wrestling, ring control, and cardio is a lot better. And those are the reasons that why he will stay on his feet much more consistently in fights. And like, a lot of fighters that are either Fortis MMA or Fortis MMA adjacent, like Morono is, and we'll talk about later on the card, they've been really showing to fight discipline, man. That's a really good sign of a camp. If you can get fighters kind of shore up their holes, yes, but even kind of borderline fight against type, not too much against type, but fight against type to shore up the holes. We see that in Morono. We'll see that in another fighter we'll talk about later. But I like Morono here a lot.
I'm with you, Dan. I'm with you. I actually like Morono a whole heck of a lot. And like you mentioned, there's not a lot of parlay pieces on this card. I do think he is one of them. One of the biggest issues that I have with Mickey Gall is that gas tank. His striking has come a long way. He's got raw natural power. He's big in the division. But boy, if he doesn't kill you early, he slows down in a big way. And if Alex Morono can stay on his bike and stay safe in those clinch positions in round one, I don't see why he can't just overwhelm Mickey Gall as this fight goes on. This is a spot where I might be looking for a round 3 sprinkle, man. I think that Alex Morono, he's a decision guy, but we've seen him improve. We've seen him get better, and we've seen Gall just death gas late in fights. I could see Alex Morono putting a beating on him and getting him out of there deep in that 3rd round. It seems like I left a note for myself here, Dan. It's no heart versus all heart. Like Mickey Gall throws in that towel sometimes, and Alex Morono never quits. So I definitely think if you're going to be on a side, be on a side of the guy that is never going to throw in the towel.
Absolutely. Fight for that money.
I love it, man. Especially we're talking betting, right? So we got to love when fighters fight for your money. So we got Morono sitting about minus 220 across the board here. He's as high as minus 250 in some places. Perfect parlay material at that number. Kind of a little steep if you want to just drop the bomb and play that money line. But I've seen a lot of love for Gall out there, Dan. One more thing I want to touch on before we move on from this fight is that this is so much recency bias right now. Everybody getting all hyped on Mickey Gall because he landed a big old club and sub. But again, you got to remember the level of opposition he's been working with. The wins that Mickey Gall has, even his most recent one, are guys that don't belong in the UFC, and then his losses are to established fighters. On top of that, Mickey Gall was the underdog in his last fight, Dan. Williams was a minus 175 favorite last fight.
Yep, absolutely. And sorry, I just want to pile on something real quick, if I can.
Yeah, go for it.
You said club and sub, keyword club, right? Because I think everybody's thinking it's the sub is going to be live for Mickey Gall. On the contrary, in fact, if you want to hedge, I say look to round 1. And the reason why I say club is because Morono, his chin, has not shown up in some fights, but it's only because he can get surprised in that early first round. So if that first round, if Gall is improving and he's finding his hands, that to me is actually the legit worry here as opposed to the sub. Could it lead to a sub? We just saw that. You just said so yourself, Clint. Yep. But I feel like if you get a nice number on round 1 and you want to hedge Gall that way, or you like Gall and you don't want to expose yourself after hearing me and Clint's takes on it, maybe look at that round 1. I won't be. I'm just throwing that out there.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree on everything you just mentioned. The heavy power that he's seeming to develop. I don't know if he's just absorbing what's left of the youth of Matt Brown, but he seems to be taking all that knockout power that Matt the Immortal Brown used to bring to the cage and kind of using it himself. He's not subbing Alex Morono unless Morono's on skates before he does it. So I completely agree. That's a great call. And Mickey Gall's never finishing anybody outside of round 1. So I think round 1 is kind of a nice target there. That's a good call, man. I do have to give out a quick shout out and laugh to CS. Thick Steph Curry. Come on now. All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. I like
I'll
it.
give you that one, CS. Okay. Next fight. We have
Hold the
got
TikTok.
Azamat Murzakanov taking on Jared Vanderaa. And Jared Vanderaa is filling in on short notice for the bum of all bums, Philip Lins. I was looking very much forward to fading Philip Lins one more time, Dan, but it appears that he has pulled out of this fight, probably saved his UFC job for the time being. We'll see how this goes, though. Jared Vanderaa, 12-6, middle of the road heavyweight, undefeated Azamat Murzakanov, coming in here making his UFC debut after a big showing on Dana White's Contender Series. Trying to find the line here. They did have Azamat at a minus 250 favorite against Philip Lins. And I am not... Oh, there it is. It looks like he's a minus 230 favorite right now against Jared Vanderaa. So not much of a difference in the line. But Jared Vanderaa about a plus 180, plus 190-ish underdog. Jared Vanderaa is a high-volume striker, man. Up here at heavyweight, this guy likes to use his hands. And he is just constantly attacking. He's kind of got pillow fists. He's a volume guy. He's not putting anybody down with one big shot. But he knows how to work at range. He's long and he's tall. He sometimes struggles with people closing the distance on him, and he really struggles with grapplers. If he gets put on his back, he's basically a fish out of water. But if he gets on top of you, he is extremely dangerous. Jared Vanderaa got some big ground and pound, and that volume turns into speed if he is on top of you on the mat. I don't know that he's going to get there in this particular fight, but I got to make mention of it that it is a strength of his. He's going to have a 9-inch reach advantage in this spot, does Jared Vanderaa. Azamat, I mentioned, coming off Dana White's Contender Series, undefeated, fast, accurate hands, big power on very short punches. It's incredible how much he can get into such a quick, short strike. He's got a big leaping overhand left hook that he likes to throw. He's got a nasty uppercut. He's a much more striker than grappler rusher, though. We don't see him going to the chain takedowns or anything like that. He's not a Habib. He likes to punch his way into range, and then when he's got you up against the fence, he will kind of drag you to the mat that way. He does have blast doubles, but again, he just doesn't go to them very often. So this is a spot, Dan, where I think Jared Vanderaa is extremely live. Like, as much as I think this sets up for Azamat, we've seen these Dana White Contender Series fighters step into the UFC and fall completely flat. They're just not what we think they are. They're not ready for the bright lights, and a seasoned UFC level fighter is able to handle them, at least in that first fight or two. It takes him a little bit to get adjusted. If Jared Vanderaa survives the early onslaught, I kind of think he takes this fight over. How do you see this fight playing out?
Great breakdown. Agree on everything from the serviceable grappling that we didn't really get to see from the Contender Series. Of course, as I'm talking about Azamat, who first popped on my radar, studying Andre Muniz, right? You wanted to see who was that guy who knocked him out on the regionals. That was Azamat. I gave him an A for my grading the winner series. And usually all those fights are pretty forgettable. You're talking about Dana White Contender Series guys, and I have to cover all of them. So Dunbar's number, right? That being said, I do remember that beautiful right hook that he landed and drew his opponent into. This guy's got that crazy short punch power that you talked about. But I agree, if Vanderaa can take it, it's going to be a bad one where, I think that you could maybe sprinkle on Vanderaa and Vanderaa round 3, even just for fun, because I'm going to be picking Azamat here. But unless, when I run this back through the comb, and unless nothing new strikes me around the second time around, then I agree. Vanderaa is shown to put numbers. He's got that deceptive Parker Porter for the heavyweight volume title, right? And it's great because you're going to underestimate these guys. If you look at him, I mean, not only is he filling in on short notice, he is filling in every inch of those Venom shorts. Believe you me. I mean, you don't want to talk about thick fighters. We'll get there, folks. But I'm going to go with
some
Azamat.
thickness on this card.
Oh yeah, we do, baby. And I'm clearly a fan of the thick set people here. But listen, I'm gonna go with Azamat here. Just something people should keep in mind is the size difference. I was hoping Azamat would be dropping down from 205, which was where he was initially scheduled to face Lins, to 185 because the guy can make it. This fight's at heavyweight, and I know I coined the phrase. Julian Marquez once told me that middleweights are essentially heavyweights that don't cut weight, which is true for a decent crop of them. That being said, there's going to be a big size difference here that's going to scare me and perhaps early casual bettors who didn't research this fight and are just betting against a short notice guy.
I like that. That's a great point, Dan. I think for the sake of the show, I'll go ahead and do the same thing that you are. I'm saying I'll pick Azamat for the win, but at that line, if you're betting it, you gotta go with the underdog for the line value. So my plan for this one, Dan, a couple weeks ago, I had some serious success with this one. I targeted a couple fights very similarly to this one, where I said, you know what? Live betting is a thing now. It exists in our world, and people do very well making money live betting. I'm trying to factor that in. I'm trying to get better at it and make it more of my handicapping process here on my MMA sports betting. This is a fight that I'm going to target because if Azamat starts to slow down at the end of round one, if Jared Vanderaa puts up any type of a fight when it comes to the takedowns, if he can get up, if he can get his hands going, and if that size difference is just redonkulous looking once they're in the cage, I will look for a better line live because Azamat's going to come out. He's going to be hell on wheels in that first round. And if he doesn't get Jared Vanderaa out of there, he's going to be in for a rough rest of the fight. I like hearing that, he should have maybe dropped weight instead of coming up weight. I think that's a big deal, especially when we're talking about a guy who doesn't go to his wrestling quite as much as we would like to see. Vanderaa helpless if you put him on his back, but that's against heavyweights. That's against Alexander Romanov, a guy that you're not going to defend a takedown against. If this guy comes in there and fails on one or two takedowns in that first round and you can get plus 250, plus 260 on Vanderaa at the start of round two, that's the spot. That's where I'll be looking to get involved.
Absolutely. And just last notes on that, absolutely makes a poor count for himself on his back, but albeit a heavyweight BJJ black belt, Vanderaa is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, folks, for what it's worth. Whereas
I'm not sure I believe that. People keep saying that. I don't know if I believe it.
I know. But hey, maybe we'll see him actually get on top because he's not in there with a heavyweight, to your point, right?
Maybe
it's one of those Jiu-Jitsu guys where his Jiu-Jitsu only works if he's on top, which again is very heavyweight. So there's that. But also, just to add to your contender series point, I totally agree. And to further that point, we've even seen that with the experienced contender series folks, like, for example, Duraev, which I'm getting a lot of Duraev vibes here. Now, thankfully for Duraev, he actually has legit wrestling, and his toughness and veteran savvy and experience saved him. But he came out there thinking he was the cock of the walk, like a lot of these contender series fighters. I know you're onto this too, Clint. They do. And I get a lot of this vibe from Azamat. If he comes out with that Duraev swagger, he could bury himself in a hole real quick.
Very true. Very true. This is one of those ones, man, and I struggle with this because I am so programmed. I am so used to doing everything pre-flop that I might end up making this bet before the fight goes. The plan is to live bet it. If you're following me here on the show and you want to see my official live picks, make sure you follow me at Die Hard MMA Pod on Twitter. That's where I lock in all my official picks and bets. You can see it when I do them there. I'll announce it later in the week if I do pull the trigger rather than doing it live. But the plan is live. For now, the plan is live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've already got 123 live viewers with us this evening. Smash that like button for us. Give my guy Dan Tom MMA a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. One of the OGs in the MMA coverage and betting space, so make sure you check the man out. I do want to shout out my other sponsors real quick. Goat Capital Sports, that's at Goat Capital _. Boy, I've been telling you about these guys for a long time, and they're on one hell of a run right now. They broke the streak, unfortunately, on Sunday. They went 12 winning days in a row, and they're offering their picks packages for all sports. So obviously I handle MMA, but they do like everything under the sun, especially big on like college basketball, NBA betting, stuff like that. Very reasonably priced packages, and they have a no loss guarantee. Make sure you check them out at Goat Capital _. Get in on the action because they are hot right now. Shout out to my guy, Uncle Wheezy, joining the show. What's up, buddy? Love to see it. All right. Once we wrap this up, I always go back and listen to Wheezy and DFS Brady break everything down. So that's my nightcap listen after I get off my own show.
Nice.
Next fight up, Claudio Puelles taking on Chris Gruetzemacher. And Dan, I cannot wait to hear what you've got to say about this one. Puelles is 11-2. Gruetzemacher is 15-4. Puelles comes out of Sanford MMA. Nice footwork, snappy leg kicks, I love that. I put nice footwork on his breakdown twice because I like what I see that much from the way this kid cuts angles. He survived some serious ground scrambles with Jordan Leavitt, the Monkey King. Everyone knows how dangerous that guy is on the ground, and Claudio Puelles was able to stay safe and overwhelm him in the grappling, even though he's a very talented striker. So you got to love to see things like that. Very solid defensively. I've noticed some high fight IQ things that he has done. You love to see that in a young fighter. And he's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this spot. So good gym, young talent. I like everything I see from Puelles. I think he's headed the right direction. Chris Gruetzemacher, completely counted out by everybody against Rafa Garcia, myself included. That was an ugly, ugly spot where Chris showed up, reminded everybody why he's in the UFC, and just got it done. This guy's got good boxing, very physically strong. He's an old school power type of fighter. You see a lot of those guys from back in the day, and he's still hanging around. He's got good volume, strong wrestling, likes to be in the clinch, good dirty boxing, knees and elbows, attacks the body with knees. The problem that I have with Gruetzemacher is that he seems a little fragile. All of his losses are by finish. He's got 2 knockouts, 3 submission losses, and he's only got a 61% takedown defense. We've seen him taken down. We've seen him out grappled. And honestly, man, going back to that Rafa Garcia fight, he got put on skates early. I mean, that was a spot where Rafa Garcia, a guy that's not really known for the knockout, put this man on notice in a hurry and then got a little overzealous chasing that knockout and seemed to kind of gas himself out. So is this a spot where we're getting recency bias one way or the other? We're looking at essentially a pick'em at this point, minus 125 towards Chris Gruetzemacher. You can get even money, plus 100 on Claudio Puelles. Dan, hit me, man. What are we looking at for this one?
I like this one, man. I don't know about betting because the line movement, I think, was a lot of, my initial thought, which was, why is Grits the dog here? Of course, I didn't see that until later. Not that I would have, went heavy on this spot. Anyways, either way, it's definitely a be careful spot, but it's a very interesting matchup for kind of all the reasons you said. I too counted out Gruetzemacher against Rafa Garcia. Rafa Garcia was training with, down there at Denver with Trevor Whitman and Justin Gaethje, whereas Gruetzemacher, you're hard pressed to find where he's training on Instagram, right? But then again, that being said, for the old heads out there with this reference, I always forget until I watched the movie, 80s movie Labyrinth, and realized I know it's the movie that most of y'all know for David Bowie and his camel toe. It was just traumatizing for a young Dan Tom, but neither here nor there. Gruetzemacher was in there. He played Hoggle. And you know what? If that guy can navigate the labyrinth, Clint, I think that he can get past Claudio Puelles. Now, here's what scares me, though. Not just the line movement. Now, you no longer have a – I'm going to get my ass kicked by Gruetzemacher, by the way, for that Hoggle comment, if he ever sees me. But listen, it not only do you have a no-plus number now with Gruetzemacher, who's going to be my official pick here, by the way, just to give my hand as far as a pick goes, but – here's the thing. You've got that. We mentioned it earlier, the age and improvement, right? Puelles is at that age where he can improve. Now, self-admittedly, Puelles was, chasing Humberto Bandeira at a point for like worst featherweight in the UFC ever. And that's no disrespect to my, Peruvian brothers and sisters. if you've seen the fight footage from down there, it's like a cage that's like literally like a diameter of 5 feet. And it's like chicken wire. Like they're not facing the best competition, so this guy got, bolstered into the UFC at the tail end of their Latin American expansion when they were funding that. So a lot of these guys were in over their head, right? He takes a 2-year break and he almost looks like a new fighter. He's training at Sanford MMA, which is not just a good gym, but a gym where you're going to get hard looks. It's that Dutch style training. So it's going to be hard sparring sessions that Hooft runs. And we've seen those improvements. I'll be looking for more. We don't have much on Southpaws against Gruetzemacher, him facing Southpaw. So that's going to be interesting. But if he survives that first round, I feel like Grits can put it together and either take 2 rounds and maybe even a 3rd round finish, except Puelles seems too tough for that. So my early pick is Gruetzemacher by decision. Again, I'm reserving the right to change my picks on some of these folks. I may feel different once I look a little closer. But right now, the value is on Puelles. And if people keep pushing the line toward Grits and you get a solid plus number on Puelles, well, I don't blame anybody for pulling the trigger, whether he's your pick or not at that point.
Well, I already jumped in. I got the even money. I took the plus 100. I'm going to be jumping in on Puelles here in this spot, man. I totally see what you're saying. I understand it. I'm going to back. This is another one of those kind of leap of faith spots where I am jumping on the trend of Puelles. He's getting better. He's showing improvements. He's working his way up and up, and I think this is a spot where we get that value on him. He breaks through to that next level. And on top of that, I really want to shout out somebody here in the chat, my guy Leon. He says Gris didn't beat Rafa just lost. Any UFC fighter beats a Rafa who's gassed for 14 minutes. And I honestly have to completely agree with that statement. I think that Rafa Garcia got a little bit overexcited and beat himself in that fight. I think that the aging of Claudio Puelles from what we saw in his last fight, the way he takes his time, the way he picks his shots, that 4-inch reach advantage, I think he's going to hurt Grits, man. Whether it's a club and sub or whether it's a straight TKO, I actually think that he's going to continue Grits' streak of getting finished in the UFC. I think he's got what it takes, and he's got better cardio. We don't have cardio concerns with Puelles the way that we did and should have going forward about a guy like Rafa. So I think he'll stay measured. He's one of those guys that lets the finish come to him rather than chasing it, and I think that's kind of what will allow it to happen. So I think Puelles can win minutes. I think he can hold his own in the grappling, and I think he's got the finishing upside here. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just counting out Grits way too early and he's still got some gas left in the tank, but I'm not going to budge off of my read from that last fight. Dan, real quick, before I'll pass it back to you here for a second. I see you trying to say something. The first fight, the one with Grits and Rafa, I decided to double down on that read. When Rafa Garcia came out in his last fight, they gave us a pick'em price tag on Rafa Garcia, and no one wanted to bet him because everyone remembered how he let us all down as a minus 250 favorite. And I said, you know what? No, we were right. We just got the wrong result. I bet Rafa Garcia. That bet cashed. I'm doing the same exact thing here. I am betting against Gruetzemacher because our read was right last time, and Claudio Puelles can do maybe a better job of what I thought Rafa Garcia was going to be capable of in that fight. So I'm sticking with the read, and I'm going right back to the well at even money.
I completely respect that, man. I guess I'll stick to my pick, not confidently Gruetzemacher. Like I said, reserve my right. I may change that. I'm probably going to stay away from this, even if I do change to Puelles, to be honest, because I do want to wait and see. But speaking of a betting OG, Joey Odesta, I feel him staring at me whenever I mention the dreaded V word, value. But you know what, Clint? If there is a value side here, it's definitely Puelles from even money to plus money onward. So I wish you the best here, and I'm just excited to see the result of this one, to see kind of where both guys are at, and if Puelles can pass that test.
I appreciate it, Dan. And hey, you know what, man? This banter back and forth for everybody listening to the show, I'm never trying to talk you off of a pick or a bet if we're on opposite sides. We got to get into it. That's what the show is all about. So if you guys think I'm wrong and disagree, that's fine. I'm giving you my info. I'm going to tell you what I bet, and I hope based on what I'm letting you know and what I'm telling you, you can make an educated bet yourself. That's the whole idea. So good luck if you end up on the other side. I will pray for you if you're trusting Chris Gruetzemacher at this stage of his career with your money. What we've got coming up next is we mentioned thick boys a little earlier, Dan. This is the Thick MMA Championship going down on Saturday. More muscle has never been crammed into one cage at a single time than this fight. It's funny because these guys always end up being on the same cards together. So I end up talking about how ridiculously jacked they are, like one right after the other. They're both right here for me. We finally get the glorious car crash of human muscle that is Alonzo Menifield taking on William Knight. Now, Menifield is 11-2. My guy, the Super Saiyan Nightmare, is 10-2. Alonzo Menifield is another Fortis MMA guy, and he is a round one monster. Let me tell you, this guy comes out hard and fast early. He swings to close the show. Big overhands, but you know what? He showed a new wrinkle his last time out. He really slowed the pace down against Ed Herman, showed a new jab that really got him through that fight. But honestly, if he gets extended, if you force this guy to work and wrestle, Alonzo Menifield has serious gas tank issues. And even in that Ed Herman fight, Dan, I feel like he did what he had to do just to squeeze by with a win, because in round 3, it looked like he was fading. If he wasn't facing a 57-year-old and short fuse Herman. I think basically anybody else on the roster would have had more gas than Alonzo Menifield in that third round after jabbing for 12 straight minutes and just couldn't do anything to him. Now, Menifield does have an 85% takedown defense rating, so got to credit him for something there. He will have a 3-inch reach advantage in this spot. William Knight, though, he is extremely short at 205, but damn, is he wide. The guy is just, his back is something you've never seen on another human being before. He's insanely explosive. The amount of muscle on his frame is not humanly possible, but somehow he pulls a Yoel Romero. He explodes and then he reloads. He finds little times to take a rest and take a break. So even though you feel like he should have gas tank issues, he almost kind of doesn't. He manages to keep that working for him throughout the course of the fight. He's got some nasty leg kicks, and he likes to make fights a grind. He likes to push his opponent up against the fence. He likes to slow them down with that grappling. He does like to push the wrestling sometimes, get his opponent on the ground, and damn is his ground and pound nasty. Like, this guy will put you through the floor if he gets on top of you on the ground. He's also got a nasty check left hook that we saw in his last fight against Will Sherratt that he put him out cold with a fadeaway left hand. He's got a 40% takedown defense, but that all comes at the hands of Da Un Jung. And if anybody remembers that fight, Dan, Da Un Jung, first off, we are finding out that Da Un Jung is very legit at this moment. I got to shout out my guy Rex Lee. He called that a mile away, and I didn't believe him. Da Un Jung apparently is the complete package. So Will Knight losing a decision to that guy, using a trip that Knight had no defense for, and basically just getting laid on for 15 minutes, I don't count that too much against him. I know there's a lot of people out there that think William Knight is awful because of that performance, and I just think that's a lack of defense from him for one fight, and I don't think that that really means much for his career or his trajectory going forward. Yeah, I like Will Knight here, man.
Wow.
Go for it. Let me hear it.
Wow. I feel like we've all broken down this fight a couple of times now, because this feels like one that's the kind of, like, I feel like, either happened or fell apart or whatever. And I know I'm mixing that a lot with OSP, because I believe that OSP and, not William Knight, Alonzo Menifield fight, I'm getting flashbacks to that. And even before they got, booked or rebooked or however it was again, I even remember when William Knight hit that check hook, right? Like, I remember having flashbacks, like, even to that. Oh, it was a completely different hook, by the way. And it was barely even classified as a hook with Thick Willie. He just kind of put his arm out there, kind of like that meme I used from Pineapple Express, like Thick Willie submission defense. I'm going to flex and bust out of here. It's kind of among that. It's among that ethos. But that's his thing. He say what you will, he can put people out. But you're right. His power, it's like it's interesting. I always laugh because I'm like, the guy used to fix up Civics, and in his UFC profile it says, "There's anything to be done to a Civic, I've done it." And I'm like, how in the hell is Thick Willie fitting in a Civic? And you look at pictures of him older, where he's sitting in front of said Civics, and he's actually Thick Willie was like over 300 pounds. So I was like, how did this man fit into a Civic? But kind of, I bring up the Civic because it's kind of like your point. He does have this deceptive. He's not as powerful as you might think, but he's kind of got the cardio, kind of like that Civic 4-banger engine, and he's slowly been adding on to the dual cams. He added some headers, he got that cold air intake. He's got the exhaust on there, and it's a sleeper when he downshifts. So he's got that economy that is not necessarily shared by Menifield or a lot of light heavyweights. But what I said about Fortis MMA is, shout out to Coach Saif Sayud, really good at instilling in his fighters, the discipline, structure, round winning, and shoring up holes along the way. But like you said, it was against Ed Shortfuse Herman. I don't want to pile on the Ed Herman is slow train, but Clint, I mean, I'm missing the reference here. It's probably from a sci-fi show from our youth. But Ed Herman's like one of those guys, like, where you shoot him with that ray gun, and the guard goes from running fast to stop you to running super slow. And it's like somebody shoots Ed Herman with one of those before every fight. So it's like, you're right. Menifield, he was working that jab and looking good, but you got to picture, he's working the jab against the guy who's going, no, so it's, you got to weigh it there. Right. So I'm going to go with Thick Willie here as well. There is a nice plus number that, we'll see. I might sprinkle for fun, especially if I come through this week feeling stronger. But it's nothing I'm going to tell any of my audience or your audience, to bet one way or another this fight. This is definitely a fight that could go a couple of different ways here. But I do think that Thick Willie, this could be a classic. He's going to lose until he wins, Clint.
Okay. I get it, man. I'm glad to hear we're on the same side. I'm really happy to hear that you kind of backed me up there. I feel like I'm going to be on an island on this one, which, hey, as we know with MMA betting, being on an island is sometimes the most profitable thing you could possibly do because everybody counts one side out and then they come through with the advantages that people just completely ignore, basically. Real quick, I do want to shout out my guy BP in the chat saying, Clint's just biased. I saw him commenting under Knight's picks on IG. BP, you are 1,000% correct, except you're missing one little piece of the story. I always comment on the fighters who I'm picking. So it's not that I'm biased. It's that I locked in the bet on Willie Knight. So now I'm in his chat. Like, that's what I do. I jump on IG and I start commenting to the people who I'm picking to win for that week. I don't simp for many people out there and comment regularly without the betting pick attached to it. So yeah, I'm absolutely on Will Knight in this spot. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I think that this is another Alonzo Menifield must win in round one spot. I think if he doesn't get it done early, Thick Willie's going to pin him up against the fence and exhaust him. Those big giant arms are going to be full of blood, and he's not going to be able to swing them as hard. And then those leg kicks are going to come in. He's not going to be able to move as well. I know people are talking about the submission from Alonzo Menifield, but that was against Fabio Charant, who is just god-awful on the ground. I don't think that that's going to be something available to him against Thick Willie. Plus, by the way, if you're going to pull that kind of a sub, Dan, you know this, you need a neck to choke a guy out. Thick Willie ain't got no neck. There's going to be no choking of Thick Willie in this spot.
Yep. And I'll just add that, and again, speaking of grappling and speaking of, shoulders and arms filling with blood for underhooks, I mean, that's not going to be the only thing filling with blood, Clint. I mean, I am excited for this fight, if you know what I'm saying. But seriously, you mentioned the Da and Jung fight, and I feel like that's going to be a trap for Menifield because he's going to see that as a path to victory. The small cage is going to encourage that path to victory. But like you said, Clint, a really key note you said at the beginning of your breakdown, to close it out from my end, which is wrestling does get most people, even Menifield, tired. So I feel like his path to victory, he could tire himself out fighting a smart fight here. And the small cage is only going to encourage that. So that's kind of why I'm thinking Thick Willie loses until he wins here.
I completely agree, man. I snapped up that plus 145. I am already on it. This might end up being another round 3 sprinkle. I love sprinkling against the guys with the bad gas tanks because that finish usually ends up coming late. So definitely looking forward to this fight. And I'm a fan of both these guys. We'll see what happens. This is going to be a human meat car crash. So looking forward to seeing who ends up hitting the canvas. This one should be fun, man. Next fight up, the War Princess returns. Cheyanne, not buys, taking on Mallory Martin. Now, this is a young, up-and-coming women's type of fight. Mallory Martin is 7-4. Cheyanne is 6-2. And not that we need to get too much into the drama. She's obviously split from JP Buys. Looks like she's gone back to Extreme Couture, where she is more at home. And man, Cheyanne Buys, she is just raw, relentless power and aggression, it feels like. Strong wrestling, dangerous from top positions, active ground and pound. She's got some decent striking on her, too. You saw a little bit of Muay Thai in that first UFC fight that she dropped. She was unable to stay out of the headlock in that spot, unfortunately. She's got some really good kicks. And the one thing I questioned about in this spot is that she had COVID. And I really want to listen to the interviews because a couple of her fights got pushed back But, you never know what these fighters are going to look like. COVID is one of these weird diseases, man. Some people catch it and they're on death's doorstep. And some people never even know they had it in the first place. So with these fighters, especially with athletes, you hear about it in football and shit like that. You got to look into how they're dealing with it and how it affected them to see whether or not they're truly ready to come back at this stage. I would hope she is. I'd like to think that she is. but she's taking on another young contender here. Not contender, sorry, that's a little strong. Mallory Martin, she's got a stinging right hand. That right hand's got a little bit of pop on it. She's got some good feints to set up those shots, but she patiently wades forward and fires off one shot at a time. Very low volume. I don't like the game plan. The fact that it's only ever one strike at a time and 3 or 4 feints in between. It looks like she's training out of SBG Ireland with that offense there. She's a good offensive grappler here. Questionable submission defense, though. She makes poor choices on the ground. She got wobbled early by Hannah Cyphers. I mean, man, I think Mallory Martin is being brought in here to make Cheyanne look good, if I'm being completely honest. Cheyanne is a decent size favorite here, minus 190 currently. She opened up at about minus 200. And it looks like a little bit of love coming in here on Mallory Martin, which I'm kind of not understanding. She's down to plus 160 at this point. Dan, maybe you can clear up to me why we kind of like the dog here, but I don't. I like the favorite.
I think it's a mix of doubting Bays, or as I first came to know her, Cheyanne Vlismas, but I think a lot of it too. If you're doing the IG surfing. You're going to see that Mallory Martin, she is in the best shape of her life training down there at Easton's Training Center. She's had she's had some cross training. She came up in my feed when I was researching Rose. So she's got, and there's a lot of talent. I think JJ Aldridge, a lot of female fighters down there. Of course, you got a different gym. You've got, Raquel and Tisha. I'm not sure how much cross training she's getting in. I know she's gotten some with like I said, Rose and others. Maybe it's a little bit of that, rub, and you want to fade, even though she's coming off of a win. So it wouldn't be recency bias, perhaps in its traditional form, but the narratives that you stated, Clint, the COVID, the separation and gym drama. Not that I'm a fan of drama or prying into people's business, but I couldn't offer either way. I obviously haven't been at the gym for a while now, Extreme Couture. But yeah, back when I was training with Cheyanne, it was when she was still an amateur, going as Cheyanne Vlismas. And yeah, man, she's just always been aggressive as hell. There's no off switch for that, for better or worse, as we've seen in some fights. But I agree. On paper, this is her fight to win, so I'm going to pick her. Slight bias stated, I guess. But again, this isn't a fight that I have a feeling that even after I come out of the proverbial comb, I don't feel like I'd be too strong either way on playing this fight.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting, man. Honestly, I looked at parlaying Cheyanne early on, and then I pumped the brakes. I was like, this seems like such an easy spot for me to get on. And I talked myself off the ledge a little bit, didn't lock in that bet yet. And now that I've looked a little bit more at it, I kind of agree with you that it just, as much as I think Cheyanne wins, I don't know that it's necessarily a good bet. And this fight could get really close and really hairy, especially with the way both these women grapple. I think a lot of it's going to come down to physicality and strength, which again, I think Cheyanne probably should get the nod. But if Mallory Martin has been training hard, her back is against the wall, she's young, she's strong. If she ends up being the stronger of the two women, she could control the grappling, and that ends up being a problem. So this fight could play out a whole lot closer than I initially expected.
Totally agree, 100% on that. Yep, I can't add more to that one.
All right. So I'm glad we're both kind of seeing this one about the same here. Definitely a favorite or pass situation here for me. And Dan, I do real quick just want to break away here for a minute. Personally, I don't ever like to feed the trolls, but I gotta shout out OG MMA here, saying it's been Fade Clint day one, Mr. Negative 1,000 units. I do just want to clear the air, Dan. As of today, my 2021 betting record is plus 20.96 units. I have 188 wins, 411 losses with 7 pushes on my bets. That does include all of my degenerate sprinkles and parlays, which is why the number is so skewed the way that it is. But my average line is plus 226. I am definitely not the best sports bettor out there. I've never claimed to be, but especially the people who wonder about whether or not I'm legit about it. I have yet to pull this move. I was waiting to do it, and here we go. I'm showing off the spreadsheet, boys and girls. Here it is. I have tracked every single pick and play I have made over the course of the last 3 years. Your boy went positive the first year of the podcast. I blew a 25-unit lead at the end of 2020, which I'm getting some serious Vietnam flashbacks about right now because that's about the same spot that I'm in. But I almost won in 2020. I blew it at the end of the year, and I'm currently up 20 units for 2021. So definitely not Mr. Minus 1,000 units. You fade right away if you want to. That's some uphill sledding because you're laying some serious chalk. And whenever I come through on those big dog calls, you're losing 3 and 4 to 1 laying those favorites. So you have right at it. Good luck, my friend.
Hey, if I could just add real quick, I will say
Go for
it adds on to a previous point. Why I like you and is because you show your work, Clint. And I was going to talk more about how you come at it with the picks and stuff, because you kind of have a similar philosophy as me. You know, we're out here, we're giving free content, and we consider ourselves more of a reference point than anything, you know, and we're trying to have fun and make of it what we will, sure. But at the end of the day, I feel like we're both, you know, good about showing our work and being reference points. And we don't really advertise to be anything else. We don't charge anybody. We don't put guns to anybody's head. So I just want to let you know that's why I respect you. But also, speaking of showing your work, you show your work even better than I. And I'm going to try to do a better job at this in 2022. As far as tracking all your bets and plays, man. So there's so many people that don't do either of those things, and you do them both, and you do it for free. So hat tip to you, boss.
Hey, I appreciate it, Dan. I never let that kind of stuff get to me, but every once in a while you got to dunk on a hater when you get the opportunity. So had to take my moment in the bright sun. Hopefully I can finish out 2021 with a winning year, because I don't want to go 2 years back to back negative. And I already promised that if I win this year, I'm shaking my ass like Valerie Laterda. So I'm going to make you all watch it. It's going to be a TikTok, and I'm going to do it. So look forward to that. Next fight coming up, one that I am very curious to hear what my co-host here, Dan, has to say. We've got Zhalgas Zhumagulov taking on Manel Kape. And Kape is a guy who I have had a hard time with so far in the UFC. Wanted to back him bullishly early when he first made his debut, and then tried to fade him, and neither of those worked out super well. I finally got one, I think, his last time out, and Zhalgas is a very, very tricky customer, Dan. Do you mind taking the lead on this one?
Not at all. Yeah, I was actually recently watching some Kape, not specifically for this fight, though. I feel like I've got a pretty decent read, and we'll have the same result here. But Zhalgas Zhumagulov's the guy I've been watching for a minute, too. He's a guy who has won a bunch of decisions that he shouldn't have if you follow him on Fight Nights Global. I know I've been someone who's been shouting that amongst others on here, and that is true. So if you've heard me or other people say this guy has won fights he shouldn't have won, that is very true. But you couple that between the hardcores to the casuals, as well as hardcores kind of judging a book by its cover, you tend to get undervalued Zhalgas lines, whether he is a dog or a favorite. And personally, I feel like I've done pretty well on that. I think I might have lost actually against Albazi. But I took him. I knew when to fade him against Paiva, and then I took him against Rivera all day, and that was, of course, a very easy cash. Didn't make any of us really sweat that. If you were back in Zhalgas, but you know, he's so small even for flyweight, and again, he looks so unassuming. I think that honestly is what gets him undervalued, win or lose. This is a spot where I'm actually leaning toward. Again, I reserve my right to change my pick, but I'm actually leaning toward him as a dog here. Kape's a guy that's really tough, man. I really feel like he's got to be opportunistic. He's really got to have a lot of counters. The good news for him is there's going to be a lot of volume coming his way, whether Zhalgas decides to counter off the back foot or come forward, obviously, but even off his more back foot approaches, he puts a decent amount of volume in there. Now, I don't know what it's going to reflect on your UFC.com stats. Y'all know me. I don't usually go by those stats. They're very skewed, and stats do not weigh as much as production would like to make you think it does in MMA, folks. So I like his volume here, and pretty much if he doesn't get countered with like a flying knee or something, in the southpaw stance. I know Ode Osborne was also a southpaw. Zhalgas will switch. He could fight from both, but as long as he doesn't get caught with something huge and get put out, I think he can win this fight. Now, Kape's live kind of all 3 rounds. He doesn't necessarily gas. He just has so much dang inactivity. You really can't, bank on him to win rounds. Whereas volume kind of makes it easy, even for dumb judges, to get it right, or at least lead more toward your guy if you were in fact backing the volume guy. So I like Zhumagulov here, but whether you like Zhumagulov as a pick or not, I feel like a fun sprinkle as a hedge, or if you just want action, look for Zhalgas Zhumagulov by decision. That is the only play that looks attractive to me, regardless of the pick here.
Dan, I couldn't agree with you more on this one, man. You broke that down absolutely gorgeously. So I think Manel Kape is the kind of guy who is exciting, he's flashy, he's everything the UFC is looking for, but he is so reliant on that finish, and he makes some really bad choices sometimes in fights, and he can really get suckered into a bit of a low-volume fight. Now, when he gets his opponents pinned up against the fence, he flurries. And man, does he go to work, and is he fast when he does that, but it's few and far between. When you're standing at range, he really tends to end up in a bit of a staring contest. Real quick, shout out to my guy Razor Sharp. Make sure you guys are checking out my boy Razor Sharp and his Gambler's First Glance videos on Twitter for other sports. He's awesome. Zhalgas Zhumagulov, though, dude, he is durable as hell. He's a tank. He just keeps moving forward. He eats everything that you throw at him. I don't think he's getting put out with a flying knee. And to that point, I don't think Ode Osborne really got put out with that flying knee either. I feel like that was a bit of a quick stoppage. But you're not doing that to Zhalgas regardless. The kid can wrestle. He's got volume. He stays in front of his opponents, and he just goes to work. That volume, I think, is going to look good to the judges. And I think you've got something with the optics there. Now, I don't think he's really got much finishing upside himself, and Kape is a guy that's been incredibly tough and durable throughout his career. That decision prop is definitely the way to go. Honestly, the spot I like here, more so than picking a side, would just be the total. Man, I know totals aren't widely out yet, but the over 2.5, right now it's minus 160, minus 170. Money's coming in on the under. I couldn't disagree with that more. I think this goes to the judges' scorecards, regardless of who wins this fight. And instead of picking a side, I think that's more the way that I want to approach it. I think I'm going to pick Manel Kape to win, but you should be getting a nice juicy number on Zhalgas by decision, and this might come down to a split decision, so that's probably the right side as far as betting is concerned anyway.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel less crazy hearing your take similar. Again, pick not as important for this matchup, or I would say in betting, again, picks and plays and analysis are three different things, believe it or not.
They are. I'm glad you said that. People don't seem to understand that well enough. Absolutely. Picking a minus 600 to win the fight is a no-brainer, but pulling the trigger on the plus 200 because there's value on that number, that's a completely different story. So I think Kape should win, could win, probably will win. I think it goes to the decision either way, so I'm going to be looking for a total spot here on this one. Now, I missed it in the comment flood. I want to just apologize to everybody. Didn't catch the screen name. Someone was asking me about degenerate action this evening. I'm on the Washington football team, and I'm on the Washington football team's running backs. J.D. McKissick and Gibson, the over receptions prop. I got over 27.5 yards for McKissick, and I got over 11.5 for Gibson. The Seahawks just give up yards to receiving running backs constantly. So if they get those boys going early, I think they could just ground and pound their way to a win here. So that's what I'm looking at. Always tweet that out as well. So follow me on Twitter if you haven't already for that kind of crap.
Nice.
Back to the fights, Dan. Back to the fights. We've got the Celtic Kid, Jake Matthews, taking on Jeremiah Wells, the man with the best win face in MMA today. I freaking love the gif of him. The man is, he's my type of dude. I like Jeremiah Wells. So in this spot, I just feel like people haven't learned their lesson. Matthews is 17-5. Jeremiah Wells is 9-2. It's another spot where, like I mentioned earlier in the show, Matthews is only 27. I cannot believe how young Jake Matthews still is. I keep expecting him to be older, but he's only 27. Very well-rounded, good strong grappler, good technical defensive striking, good range management. He's got a solid counter hook. He likes to attack the body. Every once in a while, though, he makes those young man decisions. He gets stuck on his back. He accepts that bottom position. He's so good with his BJJ. He's willing to play off of bottom, and that gets him into trouble. He's only got a 66% takedown defense rating, and he's taken on Jeremiah, who is another powerhouse, man. This guy is another one of these well-muscled, crazy, explosive type of fighters. He starts fast, and every single shot is thrown with killing intention. He does leave his chin up a little bit when he swings for the fences, but honestly, he's never been checked. His durability is still something solid. even though he gets hit, he seems to eat those shots and return fire without much of a problem. He's just physically overpowering. He's got a strong body lock. He's got a deadly top game when he gets on top. He just got promoted to BJJ black belt, so he's solid on the ground himself. And he's another guy with nasty ground and pound. He's never been finished. Like I mentioned, that crazy durability, and he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. Man, I feel like I'm falling into a bit of a trap here because Jeremiah Wells was a guy that I wanted to back when he made his UFC debut, and I was a little too scared to pull the trigger on it. Sure enough, he comes out, knocks the dude out early in the first round. We have seen Jake Matthews wobbled. We have seen this kid hurt before. In almost every fight that he's been in, he gets clipped and he gets damaged. And he went from taking on Diego Sanchez to taking on Sean Brady. I mean, just a massive step up in competition. The guys he's beating, Rostam Akman, Emil Meek, and he lost to guys like Anthony Rocco Martin. Like, it seems like every time he hits that middle tier, that's when he starts to drop the ball. And I'll be honest, I think Jeremiah is middle tier. I think Jeremiah belongs in the UFC, and he definitely can make waves here in this division. And that power, I think, is going to be a problem. He can hold his own in the grappling. He can hurt Jake Matthews on the feet. I am very tempted to lock in on at plus 160 on this underdog. Right now, he's plus 160, and you can get the favorite Jake Matthews for about minus 200. And I know it's been dogs all day, Dan, but I feel like we got another live dog in this spot. What do you think?
If Jeremiah was a bullfrog, Clint, then that must mean Jake Matthews was, and could very well be, to use the parlance of your show, a bed shitter. I don't use that term, but it went well with bullfrog. Okay, so I put two together. Got to end with the B's there, but it could very well be true, right? He is definitely, gun to my head right now. I still got to run this one through the proverbial comb, admittedly so. Gun to my head, I'll probably lean Matthews, but no way. Even if I end up on Matthews as my pick from the analysis, in no way do I play Matthews at this price. The play should be on the other side. I just want to see if, perhaps my pick and perhaps a play, will go that way if the analysis match up. The analysis that I'm looking for here is I want to go back to some of Jeremiah's earlier fights. I know he's got cardio. I know he hasn't been stopped or knocked out, I should say, since like as an amateur in like 2011, 10 years ago. So, he could be at that, the 35 might sound old for combat sports, but for his experience, his weight class, he could be right in, coming into his own peak Jeremiah Wells here, at least from his perspective. I just got to see that wrestling, again, maybe not against, standout wrestlers as I peruse through his resume right now. But when I like to look through tape, I still like to see what they do when fighters shoot on them. It might not be a good fighter. It might not be a fighter from a D1 background, folks, but you can still tell a lot by how a fighter reacts. Are they putting themselves out of position? What are their go-tos? Are they accompanying the whizzer with a wrist separation a la Max Holloway, Robert Whittaker, and looking to separate? Or are they just looking for the basic, keep my hips away, underhook, and they fall apart after that first layer? That's what I need to see for Jeremiah Wells inside of the small cage, but the small cage could also work for him because it'll force exchanges for Matthews, who can sometimes still play a bit off the back foot. I feel like I'm still waiting to see that Matthews who looked like a juggernaut facing Li Jingliang. But I don't know if that was just a flash in the pan. Maybe I have to rewatch Matthews' resume since then, but I've not been impressed, Clint. So I'm ever slightly leaning with Matthews, but this one could very well be pick. I could be very well be on the other end by the end of the week here.
Yeah, man, I just haven't been impressed with Matthews. He's at that age where we should be seeing massive leaps and improvements.
Yep.
And we're just not. And maybe that is because of the massive jump in competition. I mean, we just saw Brady go against the top guy in Chiesa. He's definitely getting up into contention. So maybe it was just an opponent bad matchup, stylistically type of situation. But honestly, I think that Wells presents a lot of the same problems that Brady does here in this spot. You've got a big, strong, powerful grappler who is not afraid to go to the ground with you, which is where I feel Jake Matthews' best chance to win is in most fights. And if you can't use that grappling, are you going to win on the feet? Man, maybe he has turned a corner and maybe he's just going to borrow a comment from somebody in the chat, finesse his way to a win here, stick and move, stay on the outside. Maybe he can. But with the way I've seen him wobbled more than once, it's just going to take one clean shot from Wells to crash that whole thing. So if anything, it's a pass. It's a dog or pass spot, and I think I'm going to take the dog.
All right, I don't hate that.
All right, man. We are getting this thing going. There's several fights left. Not too many, though. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. We've got one of my favorites, though, Maki Pitolo, Mr. Coconut Bombs himself, making his way back to the UFC cage against Dusko Thunder Todorovic. We got Maki, who is 13-8, Todorovic, who is 10-2. And this is another spot where I'm kind of tied in knots. And I'm just going to go ahead and show my hand here. It's another spot where I lean dog or pass. Like, seriously, Dan, I can make an argument for almost every single dog on this card. This is one of those cards where I feel like I could just blindly bet every single underdog, and you probably end up making money at the end of the night. Maki Pitolo, he's 1-4 since his Dana White Contender Series win. We talked about that earlier. The Dana White Contender Series fade. These folks just have a hard time adjusting to the levels, but he's at Extreme Couture. It's a good place to be. He's training with guys like Zombie and Ige and Puna, who was the last guy who beat Dusko Todorovic. He's crazy aggressive, does everything with explosive power, and he forces a brawl. Maki's got some big body kicks. He's actually got some decent wrestling, which he showed off in his last fight. And if you go back and run that back, Dan, he was dominating Julian Marquez until he somehow managed to death gas in that third round. And it was like the last 50 seconds of the fight where he gave up a submission. I mean, he was this close to just having a beautiful, complete performance against Julian Marquez. And if he comes back and he does that again on Saturday, I think he beats Dusko. Dusko is a guy who is all offense. Like, he has no defensive ability whatsoever. He blitz attacks, throws combos, running straight forward. He's got a hard right hand, and he really is reliant on that finisher. But damn, does he have tall man defense. He moves straight backwards, leaves his chin straight up in the air. Like, Puna was able to take advantage of it. I am shocked that Gregory Rodriguez wasn't able to put this man down over the course of their fight. But Dusko really relies on his durability, and I feel like he got exposed already in the UFC. I think Maki is, honestly, he's probably more well-rounded. He's maybe a little undersized. He's maybe a little bit small, but that Coconut Bomb's power makes up for a lot of that. The way he attacks the body gets you to drop your hands and protect those ribs, and then he goes up high. Man, I think Maki Pitolo is live to stay in the UFC and get his hand raised here. I was never high on Dusko. I felt like he was a fraud getting into the UFC in the first place with an extremely padded record, and Maki's not a guy that's easy to finish. So unless Dusko gets him out of there early, I do think Maki is capable of winning a 15-minute decision with that grappling or knocking this guy out cold. Talk to me, Dan. Which side do you end up on this one?
You know, I feel like there are some results, Clint, that just reverberate in the results, right? And how we play those results. For example, we mentioned this fighter earlier, Jordan Williams knocking out Hobo Cop, Gregory Rodriguez. I feel like that result is just, it's a weird, it's an anomaly in like both of their, resumes. And subsequently that anomaly perhaps got a lot of us in the betting market to go one way or the other, right? And so that's what I mean about, getting a little heady here for you folks. Apologize, but that's what I mean about these ripple effects. But aside from that, I feel like I had Todorovic right aside. In fact, the last time he fought a Hawaiian from Extreme Couture, I was on the right side of that one. But I know backing a Hawaiian from Extreme Couture who is backed by my guy Eric Nixick, there is a bias I gotta state. But again, just because I have these biases doesn't mean I blindly go with it. Everybody knows, for better or worse, I'm not a team guy, my team versus your team guy in any sense of life. I try not to be, which is why I actually not only picked against Pitolo last fight, but my big play there was Marquez by submission. Did I sweat? Of course I did. But that was a big call. That was a big call for me, and because I was talking about how underrated Marquez's submission game is, and that's from actually talking and working with him a little bit myself personally, and he showed it there and was able to cash that trend yet again with that Alvi fight. Neither here nor there, but. So just because I'm picking the Hawaiian from Extreme Couture, the point is, doesn't mean I'm like just blind going at it here, folks. That being said, Pitolo is probably one of my more favorite dogs on this card, but at the same time, I can't run out and tell you to bet it because, it could be a very dangerous spot for sure. Kind of like what Clint said, it's a very much a dog or pass, but not even like a confident run to the bank on this dog. Not that, that should be very rare, by the way, no matter who you are, how serious or casual of a player you are, that opinion. But he is, again, on a card full of dogs. Take it for what you will. He is one of my, he's up there in the top 3, put it that way, as far as the dogs up. I'm looking to play. I've not played it yet. I still got to go through my own check boxes, my own proverbial comb, if you will, run it through. But I like a lot of what I see. I think the small cage is going to hold up well. And essentially it's 2 fighters with not the greatest fight IQ going at each other. And I feel like Pitolo, if he doesn't learn from this, then he's never going to learn. And I know he's got some knockout losses on his record, but those, the tinfoil hat, to coin a term from my man here, those all came at welterweight. And, I know he's been stung and he's been submitted as far as being stopped at middleweight, but he's not been knocked out, much less knocked out cold like we saw him early on when he was making those 20 to 25 pound weight cuts. So if his chin holds up here, I think Pitolo can either finish him, on the floor or on the feet, or win the decision, and you're getting plus money on him. I'm going to take Pitolo here, but I want to caution anybody running to the bank on my words on that. That's where I'm looking at.
I'm right there with you, man. And I'm going to more encourage people to run to the window because money is coming in on Maki. So if you want that plus 145 he's sitting at right now, you better jump. You can get minus 170 over on Dusko Todorovic. And God, that's another one where just, if you want to trust Dusko with your money, I will pray for you. Yeah, that's just, he could win this fight, but I don't know how he's going to be a minus 170 almost ever unless he shows some massive improvements. And to touch on something you said, Dan, you said you wanted to see the improvements from Maki, and we talked about how both these guys can have some bad IQ situations. Maki showed it in his last fight. He showed a whole new game plan against Julian Marquez, and he was this close to getting it done. And what we know about Julian Marquez is he is maybe the most durable fighter we've ever seen. Like, that guy, holy crap. Like, I think he's Roy Nelson's son. I legitimately think that guy's chin is inhuman, and I don't know how he does it. So Maki not being able to put out Julian Marquez, I'm going to just kind of shrug that off. I think he's got a much more of a chance to put away Dusko Todorovic, a guy that we've seen knocked out already before, who definitely has worse striking defense than his previous opponent. So I like it. I like Maki. I haven't bet this one yet. I think I'm going to.
Last add-on before we push on, I know we got to tackle the rest of these cards, but Marquez also a middleweight that is more closer to a heavyweight, and he's strong, not just in punching power, but physical strength, like strength all around the area. A much better grappler than Todorovic, who's got that Jared Vanderaa jiu-jitsu black belt, the Cracker Jacks mystery box jiu-jitsu black belt. So if he wants to do it against Todorovic, who, by the way, is a small middleweight, I think, as well.
Yep.
He already did it to a bigger, stronger, better grappler. He dominated for almost 3 rounds. I think we could see another grappling heavy performance if Maki's smart here.
We could. I think it could be a late ground and pound style TKO or even Maki by decision, which is kind of crazy to think about because his knockout power is kind of his big thing. So I'm right there with you, Dan. We have got 200 live viewers. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us, talking UFC Vegas 44. I'm joined by the man himself, Dan Tom MMA. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter and smash that like button. Do the algorithm thing, please. It helps us a lot. Next fight up, Brendan All-In Allen taking on Chris Curtis. And I have a massive, massive bias in this spot, Dan. I really do. Chris Curtis was a godsend against Phil Hawes. It was the spot. It was glorious. It was beautiful. Everyone roasted me for the pick, and boy, did he come through, and he came through early with that knockout power. I officially am a Chris Curtis stan because of that one, and I've got some extra jingle in my pocket from backing him last time. Regardless of the breakdown, like, I don't give a shit about anything else going on. I feel like I need to go back to the well with Chris Curtis in this spot because he's, again, a disrespectful, massive plus 285 underdog, and I'm free rolling on the guy after hitting him as a plus 260, I think, last time, and then having a half unit on the knockout prop, which was, I think, 5.5 to 1, 6 to 1. Like, I kind of owe it to the guy to just go straight back to the well and see if he can do it for me again. The only problem is Brendan Allen is huge. Chris Curtis is a small 185er, probably could fight very well at 170. and he's taken on Brendan Allen, who does not look out of place at 205. That's really my only concern in this fight. Brendan Allen's got a long jab. He does like to attack the body. He showed that off in his last fight. Very high fight IQ move to attack the body of Punahele Soriano. Won a striking match against Puna, which not a lot of people saw coming. He does tend to get a little wild in exchanges, so he can be touched. He can be hit, but he was a grappler first. He's more of a BJJ guy, though. I don't think his wrestling is like super on top here. Like, he does use a lot of like body lock trips, takedowns, things like that to get it to the floor. Not so much the blast doubles. And Chris Curtis is a guy who we know can wrestle. You know, he fought Magomed over in the PFL a couple times and gave that man a hell of a run for his money. But Brendan Allen does have the same reach as Chris Curtis, but he's 4 inches taller. Like I said, just absolutely massive man. Chris Curtis relies on his insane cardio. He wears his opponents out by basically, you know, taking everything they've got to offer. He pulls the Homer Simpson. He lets them get gassed by punching him in the face and trying to take him down, and then he pours it on them afterward. The problem for me on this one, Dan, is I think we're going to see a 29-28 Brendan Allen. I think Allen is going to do enough with his size, with the grappling, keeping it at range in those first 2 rounds. Maybe he slows down. Maybe he gets tired. Chris Curtis comes back strong in that 3rd round, but damn, if he can't get that finish, I think he's going to need it. I think he's going to need the finish to win this fight, and that kind of sketches me out here a little bit, because I thought in his last fight he could win the fight, period. He could win by decision. He could win by knockout. He could win by sub. This fight, I think he needs that knockout, and I don't know if plus 280 is enough for a knockout or bust type of spot. How do you break this fight down, Dan?
It's an interesting one. You know, this is the second fight in this card where you've got a Sanford MMA getting a second shot at an opponent with a different fighter. Right? Yeah. So you had Phil Hawes, and now it's going to be the second opponent. Now, if he tries to show off his knee striking like Phil Hawes did, and Phil Hawes showed he had every reason to, except the problem is it might be an unfixable one, which is his chin, right? But if Brendan Allen, even though he doesn't have as bad of a chin, he can still be stopped. And Chris Curtis, you know, despite better suited, a division down, I would argue still has the power to stop Brendan Allen.
It does.
That being said, Brendan Allen's A game, which I imagine he's going to get back to here, for all the reasons, for his personal trajectory, to what the matchup calls for, from what his training partner just went through. And I think the small cage is going to facilitate that. Brendan Allen in the small cage, unless it's against Sean Strickland on short notice with some weird circumstances, tends to do Brendan Allen quite well, right? And yeah, also that he, you know, we just saw him against the Southpaw and Puna. And what did he land? He landed that open stance body kick. And it seems like a really basic, straightforward kick that has plenty of room for you to see it. But I would argue, at least in that stance pairing, that it is harder to counter than your right cross down the pipe off of a leg or a calf kick, or taking someone down off of a head kick. That body kick's kind of right in the center there, right? And it's hard to counter, at least easier counter with grappling if you want to take him down. But I don't think Chris Curtis wants to grapple or scramble with Brendan Allen. So in other words, if Allen does want to stand, I think he's going to have that body kick, but I'm going to lean to Allen. Essentially, I just think he gets his fight, but I do want to go back and watch a little bit more. I got burned on the last one. I did pick Hawes, but even as someone who picked Hawes, I can't believe people gave you crap, because I was someone who picked and supported Hawes, but even I knew about Hawes' chin. And I'm like, I got a hedge with some Chris Curtis here. I missed on the round props because I did Curtis rounds 2 and 3. I thought that's what was going to come for him. Yeah, I want to just run Curtis back through the comb before I make any hard decisions, whether or not I play this fight. But I think it's going to be 29-28, Brendan Allen. I don't know if that's what your pick was, but I think you kind of laid out a possible scenario. I'm going to go with that possible scenario.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. I'm gonna say Brendan Allen wins this one. I think he does enough to get it done. I am not saying that I won't end up changing my mind and backing Chris Curtis. One thing that I do want to do, I'm going to make a massive shout out to my guy, Cody Saftik. Most of you all know the GOAT, the parlay man himself. I'm not going to say Parlay King because that name is taken, but he's the Parlay God, if anything. Cody Saftik just does amazing work, and he is really one of the first guys that inspired me when it came to doing a podcast, MMA betting, and all that stuff. I've been a fan forever of Cody's. To be an accomplice at this point is an exciting thing for me. And his take on Chris Curtis, Man, I looked at that fight. I'm always trying to fade Phil Hawes, and I found that gem of Chris Curtis last time out, and I was sold on the fact that I was going to use him. And then Cody's breakdown came out, and Cody knows Chris Curtis inside and out. Apparently, he did some work with him before. He had some matchmaking stuff that he was working with him for. So, I mean, when I say he knows Chris Curtis inside and out, I mean next level. Like, Cody knows this guy like he's reading his favorite book. So I am going to tune into the Dogger Pass podcast on Thursday, and I'm not betting anything until then. I'm going to say I think Brendan Allen wins this fight. I'm going to say I think Chris Curtis is always live for a knockout. I love what the guy brings to the table, and I want to run this one back with him. I'm going to wait for the blessing of my man Cody Saftik and see what he has to say about this matchup, because much like my guy Dan Tom and myself, we try our very best to be unbiased. Cody is unbiased as shit. Like, if he thinks you're going to lose, he will hesitate 0 seconds to bet against you. So I want to hear what he's got to say about Curtis and whether or not he thinks he can get this one done and get his hand raised. And then I'll be jumping in a little later in the week or passing, because it's another dogger pass in my opinion. I'm not laying this price tag with Brendan Allen, and with the kind of power Chris Curtis brings to the table, I don't think you want to parlay him either, because it could just go up in smoke in about 2 seconds. So yeah, man, it's dogger pass for me. I'm going to say Allen, maybe betting Curtis later on down the road.
Completely agree, and great shouts too, deserved shouts. I always try to shout out Paul and Cody as well. Great guys.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't shout out Paul enough, because he is half of that show just as much as Cody is. He's a complete goofball. I love the guy. So Paul, if you're listening, love you too, man. Didn't mean to not include you in the shout out. Next fight.
Real quick. Lastly, but not
Go
leastly, if you were looking, if a total at minus 260 neighborhood intrigued you before, what about this fight going over 1.5 at minus 160? I feel like that's maybe the safer play over 1.5. Let's Chris Curtis knocks him out early. Chris Curtis hasn't been subbed in over a decade. And that's true. That's the finishing path, I think, for Allen if he gets a finish. Just saying.
And I think at the 1.5, that's not a bad spot, because if Chris Curtis is going to knock out Brendan Allen, we have seen Brendan Allen take a beating on the feet and zombie his way into the second and the third round. Sean Strickland was able to put him down again on short notice. That's a big important part of how he got finished there. So if Chris Curtis is going to finish him, it's not going to be the way he did Hawes. I think it's going to be more methodical. I think it's going to take a little bit longer. And like you mentioned, Chris Curtis is not a guy that you finish easily. And if Allen's going to do it, it's probably going to be that body kick over and over and over, and then maybe wearing on him being the bigger man late in the fight, getting the submission or some kind of TKO stoppage where he's just too much to handle, which again probably comes after you kind of wear down Curtis a little bit. Yeah, I think that over 1.5 is probably a decent look. That's a little chalky, but I don't hate it, man.
Yeah, if that's in anybody's wheelhouse, then it's worth a look, maybe.
Absolutely. Keep an eye out for those totals dropping. I don't think that's a bad look whatsoever. Moving on to another fight that I really like, and what I'm highly anticipating here, ready to have some egg on my face. We've got Jimmy the Brute Crute taking on Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill. And man, talk about a crash course for some young up-and-coming contenders. The UFC is big on both Jimmy Crute and Jamahal Hill. Like, they know what they've got in both these guys. They're both marketable. They're both great fighters. And finally, they're tossing them at each other. They tried to give Jimmy Crute the opportunity at a title. They threw him in there against Lionheart. That did not end well for him. And I know it was an injury. I know it was that leg going numb of his that did it. But if you watch that fight, Anthony Smith was kind of picking him apart with that jab. I know he was having success with the leg kicks, but Anthony Smith was doing work of his own. Jim Crute is very exciting to me, but his game is so basic, Dan. I went back and I rewatched a lot of his fights. Literally all he does is swing an overhand right, which misses more often than not. He got Modestas Pokaukas with it, but most people he misses. And then he just chops at that outside leg. He chops at that outside leg. He dives in for blast doubles. And then he looks to get you out of there with ground and pound or a sub. And if he doesn't do it early, he tends to struggle. He's got solid high-level BJJ. He's a good wrestler. But Jamahal Hill is a guy who is so slick on the feet. This is so striker versus grappler. It's not even funny, Dan. Now, Jamahal Hill, you're going to look at his stats and you're going to see a 56% takedown defense. That was against Darko Stozic. like 4 years ago, he gave up 6 takedowns to Darko and still managed to get back into that fight. And he's the only guy that's taken him down. So that one guy ruined poor Jamahal Hill's takedown defense rating. And Jamahal Hill is the definition of fuck around and find out. He fought Paul Craig, one of the worst decisions I think I've ever seen, deciding to engage in the grappling. Paul was desperate to get Jamahal Hill to the floor. And instead of Hill, detaching, separating, getting back up on the feet, Craig was able to snap his arm off because Hill decided to play in his guard. Now, Jim Crute is a top position player, not a back player, so I don't think this fight would play out the exact same way, but this is a very similar matchup where you've got a guy that he is just levels above on the feet, and then if Crute gets this into his wheelhouse, Hill is probably very much in trouble. But I think that Jim Crute is a bit over-exaggerated at this point. If I'm being honest, Dan, I think his game is very, very easy to dissect, and I think a young, improving, thinking fighter like Jamahal Hill is not going to have a problem doing that. One thing Jamahal Hill does is fluidly stance switches. I don't think Crute's ready for that. I think that leg kick of Crute is going to be almost nullified because Jamahal Hill can get the weight off of the foot that's been attacked, switch stances, and has no problem getting his offense off on the opposite side. On top of that, every time you switch your stances, your defense is different as well. And Jimmy Crute, I don't believe is going to be a savvy enough striker to be defensively sound when the fight flips suddenly in the middle of the match. Jamahal Hill's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here, man. And he may have a rough takedown defense, but he's got an excellent get-up game. He was minus 300 against Paul Craig, and now he's plus 185, plus 165 against Jim Crute. I don't see it, man. I think I have to play the dog in Jamahal Hill, and more so than just I have to play the dog here in Jamahal Hill, I think I'm going to confidently play Jamahal Hill. I need someone to talk me off a ledge. If you like Jim Crute or you see a reason why I shouldn't be backing Jamahal Hill in a big way this weekend, man, let me have it because I'm ready to get like unnecessary on that Jamahal Hill line.
I think this is another spot maybe for your good old live betting spots here. I think this could be one you or your audience if they have similar feelings or stylings of betting. This would be a spot for that. That being said, we got some healthy dissension here because I actually like Jimmy Crute here. I'm guessing it's basic, MMA math. He beat Paul Craig. He too is a submission guy with arguably better wrestling than Paul Craig, though Craig's been working on that double leg shot, folks. Don't count him out as just a jiu-jitsu guy there as far as Craig goes. And I actually sprinkled a bit on Craig despite officially picking Hill. I just felt like that the line was too wide. I didn't disagree with Jamahal Hill being a favorite per se, but being that wide, and the one way he was going to lose was going to be by submission. And between that, I scored on Sabatini getting Jamal Emmers, and I just feel like, man, between those two submission losses, like when Jamals get subbed in the UFC, Clint, they get subbed hard. So maybe it's just it's going to even back out and go 2 for 1 here, but I'm going to stay on that trend and take Crute by submission. Now, do I suggest laying the price on Crute, even if you like him as a pick and your analysis lines up with mine, which again, I actually want to go back and look at a little bit more Jamahal Hill here as well. But there is one thing that I kind of tabbed, and I sprinkle so small. This is one thing I admittedly pulled the trigger on earlier today. If you're at a house like one of the houses I play Bet Online will do not just round props, but rounds with methods. And I sprinkled a bit on Crute round 1 and round 2 by submission. Because if he doesn't submit Jamahal Hill by mid-round 2 and the fight's is not going his way, well, then I think Jamahal Hill is going to run away with it because I completely, despite my pick and my play here, I completely agree with all of Clint's analysis as far as the striking. It was really well broken down. It's deceptive if you go with stats. If you want to look at that, he does have a winning record. That is Jimmy Crute, 2-1 against UFC level southpaws. But both the wins and the losses are by submission. So you really can't use that to say how he's going to stack up striking-wise. Because striking-wise, I think he stacks up poorly. I have the same sentiments as Clint. But you got the small cage. You got the better submission grappler, a clear path. Plus the weird little Jamal's get sub-hard thing that I can't get out of my head. So perhaps that's why I'm going down this path here, a little healthy dissension. So I'm going to pick Crute. I did a little bit of sprinkling, but man, it's okay. Again, like what Clint said, it's totally cool. I don't care if you guys are with me or not. I could care less. I'm not telling you where to put your money. But I will say is that if you do disagree with me and you're more on Clint's side, I think this is another live betting spot you could look at.
That's not a bad call, man. The live betting is maybe a spot that can protect you here because if Jim Crute's going to win, he's probably going to do it early. If he doesn't get it done in round one, then yeah, you probably get a much better price on Hill. So maybe not a bad look to do this thing from that perspective. I guess, your points are enough for me to pump the brakes a little bit and not just back the dump truck up on Jamahal Hill. I still might do it, but not, live on the show. I'm not going to lock the bet in. We'll see what happens in a day or two.
Sure.
Definitely got to look at it just a little bit, but I think
absolutely,
man, that Jamahal Hill's stand-up game really is the big piece of this pie here for me. I have no doubt
that I love his stand-up.
His get-up game. Like I have no doubt that Crute is going to get him down. I think Hill can stand back up, and that's the big key there. Because if he gets stuck on the ground with Crute, then we have a problem. But I think,
Although I will say,
right, I'm struggling.
Last bit from here. Last bit from me here. I will say is that even if Jamahal Hill gets stuck on the ground all around one, I think that's a good sign if you're a live bettor, because I think that even though that's a bad look if he can't get off the ground and he's able to get him down. That being said, if he's able to survive, I think that alone is a good sign, and maybe you're still going to get some decent plus money. You're still going to sneak past even the live betting line a bit. So just throwing that devil's advocacy out there for anybody looking to support the hillside.
Yeah, beard stroke. All right, I feel you. Next fight up, man, we have got Clay Guida taking on Leonardo Santos in this spot. The ageless wonder. We've seen multiple Brazilian ageless wonders here recently, and man, I don't know how they do it, but they just never stop. Like one of my rules is you got to have a damn good reason to bet somebody who's over the age of 40, and these Brazilians, they just keep going. I mean, 42, 43, it doesn't matter. Clay Guida is my favorite wild man, and I have a special place for him in my heart, not like most UFC fans, Dan, but because my father-in-law hates him. The fact that he, he's so wild and his hair always gets in his face and he runs around and he's doing this thing in the cage, drives him nuts because he can't keep up with what he's doing in there, and it just makes me laugh hysterically every single time I watch him fight. And he calls him first generation upright because he looks like a caveman. It's hilarious. I love watching Clay Guida fights with my father-in-law. So Guida, I mentioned the unorthodox striking. This guy's movement is on another level. You never know where he is going to be. It's hard to find him. And he impressed me big time in his last fight. He gave Marco Madsen a run for his money in a fight that I really thought he could pretty much be counted out in. Still crazy tough, still crazy durable, that awkward, wild striking, good, solid wrestling, physically strong, good gas tank. Really, the problem with Clay Guida is the submissions, man. He still has those 10 losses by sub. That's the clear path to victory to beating him. Leonardo Santos, boy, this guy is a monster in there. Sometimes his striking is solid. His grappling is solid. He's elusive. He's got good footwork. He's got good head movement. Strong counter-striking game, I've noticed. And he's got good BJJ back control. Big Travis Brown elbows up against the cage when people try to get him to the ground. But he's got questionable competition level in the UFC. And, man, that fight against Dawson last time out, I don't know what was going on, but I thought that fight was, really close, really back and forth and tight, and Dawson kind of pulled a Hail Mary out of his ass at the end of it. It was much more Dawson looking back on it than I realized. However, Santos does have an 89% takedown defense still after all of this, so more often than not, this fight probably stays standing, and if it doesn't, I think Santos has a very clear path to submission over Clay Guida. We've seen that be something abused by fighters, and I think that Santos can absolutely tap Guida out for the 11th time on Saturday, so it's a bit chalky, and I don't like it, but that minus 190 on the favorite Santos is kind of the way that I'm leaning. You can get plus 160 on the underdog Clay Guida, and I know he's been kind of showing up and fighting hard for his backers recently, but he's just so shot-worn at the end of the day. He's got so many miles on that body. I don't think I can bring myself to back Clay Guida here this week, Dan. How do you approach this one?
Maybe it's my bladder that's going to be shortened in this breakdown, but honestly, I feel like it's fairly straightforward. I feel like it's, I could see being dog or pass. There's a little bit of money, I believe, trending toward Guida, which I get. Santos looks like the wheels have finally fallen apart. could be a classic Guida upset, except the classic Guida upset, is not so much there. You mentioned it too. He's fallen off of a bit of a cliff himself, but in a different way. He may seem like the more resilient fighter on surface level based off of his, aura and past body of work. But as we've seen, you mentioned 11 submissions. He gives up really fast if you can find your way around his neck. And that alone will keep me away from the dog here, which is why the pick's going to be Santos. I'm probably going to stay away because this one read, again, to use the parlance of your show here, as kind of bed shitter material. But maybe I just take a small sprinkle on the Santos by sub, and I roll on. But that's all I got for this one.
Fair enough, man. That's kind of the way I'm looking to. I think Santos by sub definitely has some legs here in this spot. Might be a club and sub, but we have seen Guida be tough enough not to get KO'd. If you want to bounce and go hit the restroom real quick, man, I will go ahead and play a commercial from one of our sponsors, and then we'll circle back for the co-main and the main event.
Perfect timing. I'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Here we go, everybody. Perfect opportunity to thank Pub Sports Radio for hosting the Die Hard MMA podcast. And let's go ahead and shout out our sponsors this evening. Man, they messed me up on the video clips. They're always moving the dang video clips. All right. Here we go. No, that's the countdown. What the hell? This was supposed to be easy. What did they do? There it is. See, that's why we have a new commercial, an updated Southtown 101. That's why it looked different and I couldn't find it. Shout out to Josh Locks for the $20 dono. We appreciate it. We be pubbing over here, absolutely rocking things on the internet with the best sports betting content on the net today. My guy Dan Tom is back, so let's talk about the people's main event. Rafael Fiziev taking on Brad Riddell. And this is a spot that I'm extremely excited about. If you follow me on Twitter already, you know I got in early. I'm on Brad Riddell. I got 2 units at even money plus 100 on my guy, and I have been waiting for this spot. I wanted to back my guy, Brad Riddell. He has been so undervalued by the MMA betting community, Dan, that it's not even funny. He is so good. He is so well-rounded. He mixes in the wrestling way more than people expect from a kickboxer. He's tough. He's durable. He's got knockout power. Like, Brad Riddell is the complete package. Now, Rafael Fiziev, you can say a lot of the same things about Rafael Fiziev. Striking is off the charts. He's more of a striker than a grappler, obviously, but he's worked on that counter wrestling, knows how to keep himself upright, trained at Tiger Muay Thai. So we know he's got that well-rounded MMA game in the back pocket. But what worries me about Fiziev, I bet on Bobby Green against Fiziev, Dan, for the same reason I'm backing Brad Riddell, is because that questionable gas tank. Now, it didn't turn out well with Bobby Green. That fight was extremely close, but it went exactly the way I thought it was going to go in my head. I just needed Bobby Green to snake away that second round. I think Brad Riddell can do the same thing. With the pace that Fiziev fights at, he slows down when he can't get the finish. Now, here's the thing. He can absolutely get the finish. So don't come at me if he throws a spinning, whatever kick and knocks Brad Riddell out. That's what Fiziev does. He obviously could win this thing by knockout quite easily. I just don't think he's going to. I think Brad Riddell is tough and durable enough and a good enough striker to stay in this fight. And when he mixes in that wrestling, I think that's going to further push the gas tank of Rafael Fiziev. No one's been able to put the dude out yet because he's got a brick for a head. But if someone was going to do it, I think Brad Riddell's the type of fighter that can absolutely get that late finish and keep this thing from going to the judges' scorecards. Or by mixing in that wrestling, he can win a decision. I think it's a round 3 finish for Brad. I think it's a close, well-fought, earned decision for Brad Riddell. Either way, at the even money price tag, I will take Brad Riddell. Dan, how you looking on this one?
I love that breakdown, man. This is definitely like the people's main event, even if it wasn't a co-main event, wherever on the card. It's a hardcore's delight from, technical nerds to even gamblers, because I would say that because, the line surprised me, man, because I feel like you do, Clint, and I was expecting to see I was expecting to see a tight line, but I was expecting to see the movement and the way it came from other angles. I did not expect to see people fade Brad Riddell. This was very surprising to me. So seeing a plus number next to Riddell's name, which is going to be my pick here, it makes me want to pull the trigger too. And I just very well may, if this keeps up. Of course, this is a co-main event, so you either are at a point where you're chasing or you're having fun and playing ahead, right? So I don't want to close the door. I want to leave the door open. But here's why I agree with the round 3 in the decision, but here's why I lean more toward the decision and why I'm also a bit more tentative to play this one, is because they were former training partners. And that is something I can speak from experience. You get your worst, most awkward rounds with somebody who is a training partner who, again, they're not like it's Izzy and Riddell, which they still spar with one another, by the way, but it's like completely different weight classes. Like these guys were right around the same. Not, at a Tiger Muay Thai, which is like a hotbed, right? And I don't like that. Those matchups can be really tentative when it's strikers, not so much grapplers. When it's strikers, it's more tentative when it's a former training partner, for one. And for two, when it's not just a match, but it's a match in front of people and there's stakes on the line. It generally makes fighters much more conservative. So that's why I say a little bit more toward the decision, and not to get too tinfoil hat-like, but one of the areas I am very tinfoil hat-like is respecting the intangible of that training partners, because sometimes you just get a complete different fight. You'll get fighters sometimes go against style. I feel like, your over total, it would be a nice spot. It's probably going to be chalky as all hell, but I feel like that would be a good hedge spot if you're taking the side, especially the plus money side like Riddell. Maybe there's not an option. I'm just talking out of my ass. The point is, I feel like both guys are going to be conservative. I feel like this fight's going to go long, but I got Riddell.
I am fully in favor of talking out of our asses here on the show, so don't worry about that at all, Dan. I think, that's a great point that you brought up with them being former training partners. I heard my guy James Lynch, shout out James, breaking the whole thing down this morning, and he mentioned that. Always a wealth of knowledge, that guy. And I think that's a valid point, that you get both guys kind of trying to level each other. Each one thinks they've got something on the other one, so they're playing games. The game plan shifts a little bit. It's a bit awkward. It's a bit rough. So that's a very, very good and valid point. I've seen Brad Riddell be undervalued in the betting market way too often, way too long. Fiziev is great, but Brad Riddell, I think, is the more well-rounded of the two. I think we can argue he should maybe be a minus 150 here in this spot. And Rafael Fiziev he's got the public backing him. He's way flashier. He's got that back bend where he avoided the body kick. Like, that's the kind of shit that gets people behind you, the hype train. So the bookies know they've got to adjust.
Big hats.
Gotta love the hat.
He's got the big hat.
The hat is worth easily 20 cents on the betting line.
He looks like, when he wears the hat, he looks like one of the, like you're playing GoldenEye on the big head mode. Shout out to my N64 old schoolers out there, aging myself at this point. But I always think of that when I see Fiziev. I know, bad stereotype, but
very appropriate. No, I love that. That's exactly what it looks like. But anyway, I got to go with Brad Riddell. Even money, plus 100 underdog. I'm in. Let's go. 2-unit spot. I'm going to try again to fade Fiziev, and we'll see how it goes this time. You are just in time for the main event. If you're joining us live, we are talking UFC Vegas 44, Font versus Aldo. Rob Font, my guy. I'm going back to the well, guys. I'm sorry. I can't for the life of me get a Jose Aldo fight correct. This man makes me suffer. If I bet on him, he loses. If I fade him, he shows up and he's looked like he's never looked better. I just cannot for the life of me figure out Jose Aldo. Dude's an absolute legend, so I mean no disrespect whenever I go against him. But Rob Font is a guy that I think is going to be able to duplicate the Max Holloway game plan. And that's really what Jose Aldo struggled with. We're talking boxing heavy, keep it on the feet, volume, volume, volume. This version of Jose Aldo slows down in the later rounds. Round 3, round 4, round 5. He's not quite the same guy. Both Max Holloway and Peter Yan were able to take advantage of that. So even though Jose Aldo has looked better recently, he's been fighting 3-round fights. And I think once this thing gets extended into the championship rounds, people will argue that Jose Aldo has the experience in those rounds, and that's going to make the difference. I think that actually favors Font because Aldo is just getting a little long in the tooth. Now, I know Rob Font is only 1 year younger, but the wear and tear on his body is significantly lower. 19-4 versus 30-7. Aldo's been fighting forever. He's a 45-year-old man in fight years. So, man, I just think the boxing of Rob Font is beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's so slick. It's so accurate. He's got the reach advantage here in this spot. And even though if you look at the stats, he's got a 53% takedown defense. It's a lot like Hill we were talking about earlier. 6 of those takedowns came from Ricky freaking Simone. Do you think Jose Aldo's going to come out here and wrestle like Ricky Simone? I don't think so. And I know Jose Aldo pulled that veteran savvy move against Marlon Vera. He backpacked him in round 3 to get a win there. If that fight gets into round 4, Vera knocks out Jose Aldo. Like, he was fading in that fight. If he didn't get that back position secured, I really think he was going to end up losing to a guy like Cheeto just based on that youth, that power, that strength. And then I still say Aldo's got a bad gas tank. I've been saying it for like 3 years, and he keeps winning anyway. I'm going to say it again. I don't care. I know I look stupid at this point, but I'm saying it again. We got to watch out for Jose Aldo's body shots. That's the big thing, man. He comes in there and he just rips the rib cage like nobody's business. And I love watching that. But I think Rob Font's a slick enough boxer that he'll be able to cause some problems when he does try to take those opportunities. Leg kick Aldo doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, I know I'm being a little long-winded here. The breakdown is a little bit sloppy on this one. I apologize, guys. But all it comes down to is that I do think that Jose Aldo's days are numbered. I think this is a good spot for Rob Font, and I think the 5 rounds favors Rob Font. The best part about this for me, Dan, is that everyone is betting Jose Aldo. This line opened up a minus 185 for Rob Font, and money has flooded in on Jose Aldo. It's now minus 140 Rob Font, plus 120 Jose Aldo. And I think it's not showing any signs of stopping. I'm going to wait. I'm going to be greedy. I'm just going to sit back and watch. And when I get Rob Font at minus 120 or some shit, that's when I am going to pounce and put a bet on this thing. And absolutely, I'll be sprinkling those rounds 3, 4, and 5 props. How are you approaching this one, Dan?
You know, I'm a bit on the opposite, which will be good. We'll have some healthy dissension.
Let's go.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, though, especially at the end there. If you're a Font supporter, I completely agree. You should be excited about this line movement. You should be waiting as close to, even money to be greedy. I don't know if you're going to get that close. Maybe you do only get as close as minus 120. But, within that range right there, right? You're already beating the line. Don't disagree with any of that. I don't disagree with the Jose Aldo cardio thing, but I feel like we really got to respect how he's revamped since going to bantamweight. I feel like I was one of the earliest on not just the Jose Aldo cardio, but really laying out how he needs pockets to recoup, which is why when he faced a builder like Holloway, it was a bad recipe. And you had a bunch of people. I was on an island with that fight too, picking Holloway the first time around. But that's one of the few breakdowns that I can count on one hand that I'm really proud of. If you go back and read the breakdown and how I wrote it up beforehand and how the fight plays out, and how those lessons that I attributed to each fighter actually is true and sticks to both of them as their careers go on. I am very proud of that breakdown. It's right up there with Holm Shevchenko, as far as they read almost like I wrote them like after the fight. I love those. To knock myself
those are
down
so few and far between as an analyst that they're shiny little moments that we can always go back to.
And I feel so weird complimenting myself. If you know me, I hate to do that. So let me knock myself down a peg and say that but because of that, I too have been wrong on Aldo because of this bantamweight turn. Perhaps I've held on too firmly of that cardio aspect, right? And even though against Marlon Moraes, I like guys who kind of mimic Aldo, I said, okay, we're going to get a Holloway Aldo fight with Corey Sandhagen Moraes, and it ended a bit faster, but I felt that dynamic was there. Now I ended up picking Rob Font against Marlon Moraes. Again, another kind of parallel to Jose Aldo here. for similar reasons, which would go along with your reason for picking him here, the kind of the Max Holloway pathway. But the thing was, and I even said this back then, is that I'm picking that dynamic, but I must state that he's got a lot of the same tools and length. He's actually longer than Holloway Font is. He's got 2.5 inches longer reach than Max Holloway, which is deceptive there. But the thing is, he doesn't build as much. He doesn't pressure and pace as much. He has excellent pace. I expect Font's pace to be even better this time around because a lot of fighters, their first 5-round fight on a big stage, they tend to be a bit conservative. They want to make sure they can go it. No problem in Font's pace at all. However, I feel like this is a fight that's so volatile to bet because I like both guys. I feel like it is going to be competitive. I feel like there's an argument for the fight to end in every round for every fighter. Now, obviously, the hardest argument to make is going to be Aldo round 5, possibly Aldo round 4. But you could still make those arguments here because when I look at how their striking breaks down, Font's got the jab. You know, I did that top jabbing article, right? I had that Font shout in there. But a king in that list is Jose Aldo, and for good reason. And specifically, not just throwing the jab, but what he does better than Font is he counters the jab. In fact, most of Jose Aldo's offense is based off countering that jab. And even Cody Garbrandt, rusty, confused, off the back foot, beat up and tired in that 5th round, was hooking off of his jab, countering over Font's jab. And those are like doing the main things that Jose Aldo does, except Cody Garbrandt does them inconsistently, and Cody Garbrandt puts him out of position. Cody Garbrandt is faster than Aldo, but I would argue, even at this advanced stage, not by that much. And I would argue, as impressive as Font is, he is not fast-handed. He's heavy-handed. He is technical. He puts a good, clean, and consistent pace. I wouldn't go so far as to call him slow, but by bantamweight standards, he is definitely not fast, which is a hard thing to read because it sounds like you're shitting on the guy. That's just facts. Plenty of fighters that are slow are still really good, and they can still strike really well, right? It's not like some like obvious Ed Herman slowness, but I think Aldo's going to have the speed edge, right? So the thing is, for me, is I was watching Font. Well, does he put the pressure on? Does he build? And he didn't. Even in his best, kind of one of his best, most disciplined performances against Garbrandt, one thing he kept doing is even when he got Garbrandt hurt, and I know Garbrandt kept, I'm going to bring back the Rafael Sunsao punch, and that would gain him some respect. But even when Garbrandt didn't do that, here's something that Font did that whole fight. As impressive as he was, you go back and watch it, folks. He gets Garbrandt to the cage, and then he lets him off. He gets him hurt, and in the few times I wanted to see him in extended combinations, he maneuvers and defends better than I expected. Just like Jose Aldo, leaning more into the Marine Corps boxing, really getting more, boxing looks out there. Font has done the same thing. If you remember, Font came under Delagrati. He was actually more of a Muay Thai fighter. And he actually, you could argue, had more weapons in his earlier fights. He is focused more on boxing, which works well for him because he needs to control the length. He needs to control the fight. The jab and his length is how he does it. So it makes sense that he's leaning into this. But if he gets into a boxing fight, much less a boxing fight where even if he's winning, he's going to allow Jose Aldo to reset, I don't like that for Font. I don't like that at all. And what Holloway would do is not only would he continue combinations in shifting when feeling in stride, which Font will do, but Holloway did it in other areas where Font doesn't necessarily do. We saw Font when he got Garbrandt hurt and built on more than 2 or 3 punches. He would kind of duck. There will be body shots there, and he would kind of lean off, reset, jab again. Whereas Holloway, he's hitting you on the way out. He's taking the body. Whereas Font, it's more pot shots to the body. Now, I think Font's uppercut and his right hand's going to be very live, and his front kick, deceptive. Watch the front kick and the uppercut going right up Jose Aldo's guard here. Those are going to be the live shots for Font. But unless he knocks him out or hurts Aldo, I feel like Aldo, even with his conditioning being suspect and even with a lot of competitive rounds where he looks like he's in trouble, he's checking the clock, I think we're going to see those things here again. However, I don't know if I can trust Font to really run away with it. Can he win? Yes. Can he even win by decision? Yes, he can. But I don't trust it. I'm going to trust the guy who I've seen done it more, even when he's looked sketchy, even in the advanced parts of his career. He's still been scheduled. He's done the damn thing. He surprised us positively more than he surprised us negatively. And even in the advanced stage of his career, I ultimately like Aldo's speed and how he's wired to punish what Font uses the most. And in order to Font to get his right hand and his front kicks going, he's going to have to get that jab first. So I'm going to go with Jose Aldo here. and I'm going to do it by decision and what I feel is going to be a competitive fight. But here's a note I'm going to say. Unless either fighter takes each other out in the first round, the most important round in this fight, folks, is going to be round 2. Round 2 is going to be the most important round. So if you're a live bettor, I don't know if you're going to get a good read by then, but round 2 is going to be your pocket, because round 1's either going to be ultra conservative and respectful, or or they're going to put each other out. Okay. So round 2, I think, is really going to tell you how the fight goes.
Well, the sound you guys just heard was me putting my hammer away. That was a gorgeous breakdown, Dan. I loved the technical pieces that you threw in there. That was masterful, if I do say so. So that scares me a little bit off Rob Font's, because those are some big, big technical points that, while I pride myself on being an MMA analyst, I did not pick up on those pieces. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to do a little bit more hard work, a little bit more research, and make sure I actually like my Font side before I put a stamp on anything. But I think that's definitely something that everybody wants to be watching out for in this fight. And like Dan said, especially if you're a live bettor, watch round 2 extremely closely. I'm going to stick to my pick. I'm going to say Rob Font, especially if this line gets down near a pick'em. That's going to be the way that I am going to be looking. We'll see if I end up getting there. As always, follow me on Twitter. I will lock in those official bets if I decide to pull the trigger, and that's when you'll find out. As of right now, I will tell you to end the show. So those of you who do want to follow my picks, or at least have an idea of what I am betting on. Where did that go? Okay, you know what? I had it up 2 seconds ago and it ran away on me, Dan. I apologize. So the big one is I did do our guy, Brad Riddell, plus 100 for 2 units. And then I have Luis Smolka, minus 140 for 2.8 units. I have Claudio Puelles, even money, plus 100, 1 unit. William Knight, Thick Willie, plus 145 for 1 unit. That's what I've got right now, locked and loaded, ready to go. My action is in. We'll see what I add. I like a lot of dogs this week, so there's a chance I'm going to be rapid firing big time on this card. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I always love doing these breakdowns with you. It's a positive environment. Love having you. You fit right in. And as I mentioned before, those breakdowns are technical and excellent. So the floor is yours, man. Shout out whatever you want at this point. Have at it.
You're way too kind, man. And yeah, I'll be looking to lock mine in. But this is honestly, I was looking at reviewing what we talked about, and this is a really solid preview. I like this card a lot. I feel like we've got some takes where we're on the same side, some takes where we're different. Hopefully that provides you guys with enough reference. Clint, you're too kind to have me back on this show. We need more people having fun like you in the space, man. Like even and again, not just showing your work and this and that, but even like just the fun joke stuff, man. Like I feel like you're the only person that can make me laugh after losing a bet. I remember, I think I whiffed on like that Maverick Barber, and you had some Pokemon one, and it just it made me laugh. So I ate shit, right? I was on the wrong, but it made me laugh so hard. I don't follow the TikTok, but I'll just see what you post on the feed, man. So keep spreading that kind of energy. We definitely need more of that kind of energy in this space. Appreciate you and having me and y'all watching. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. And yeah, if you can't laugh at yourself, like, I mean, who can? So I always try to poke fun, right side, wrong side, making everybody laugh. Make sure you follow me on TikTok if you haven't. I'm trying to bring some betting and MMA content to TikTok that isn't there right now, working my ass off to fill that out. So thank you for mentioning that, Dan. Give my guy Dan a follow at DanTomMMA. He does some amazing work, as you guys have noticed on this show. Thank you very much. And y'all have a wonderful week. I'm hoping to stack some serious piles this week. I may lose my mind just a little bit because it's your boy's birthday week. I'm old as shit, but I'm going to lose my mind on Saturday for these fights.
Birthday.
So hopefully we cash in on a little bit of that extra birthday luck this week, man. Let's go.
Rooting for you, birthday boy.
I appreciate it. All right. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Good luck on all your degenerate action. I'm going to go sweat the Washington football team because I need Antonio Gibson to go off tonight to save me in not 1, but 2 of my football fantasy leagues. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. We will see you guys next time. Let's roll.